Hey,
So, like we were talking earlier, and one of the things that sounds interesting to talk about is this concept of systems. And you talked about the complexity aspect, and in life, everything is a system. It's just systems all the way down, which is why when I teach it, I relate it to kind of the true and the true, good, and beautiful. Like, this is reality. The easiest way to understand it is in terms of systems, because if you understand that, you can take the principles and apply them to every single system because it's the same. That's what makes it so powerful, to understand that. So, you have a lot of education and information about the chaos within systems, which is I am more about the systems thinking and the progression from data to information to knowledge, wisdom to truth. And that's, making information, that's data, original data, more useful as you go up the path, for yourself, so that you can know yourself and know the system you're in. But I mean, just what are your thoughts on the concept that this world is a system, that we are a system, that an organization is a system, that if you understand that nature of reality, that you have kind of a leg up. You're able to truly see things more clearly because you can understand what lies beneath them. You have some thoughts on that with chaos
yeah,
theory and
yeah,
what's going
well,
on?
yeah, well framed in terms of the issue. I think it's a fundamental issue um, in all of the kinds of polycrises that we seem to be facing as a species. Um, my initial thought is that um, if we really attend to and look at nature closely, um, we can see that nature is an integrated, interdependent, evolving, becoming whole, indivisible. For some reason, we have this illusion that the one footnote exception of that is us.
That's right. We're different.
We're different. We're apart from and not a part of. And so we can act consciously in ways that are counter to the greater good.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
empowered to do that. Um, and and like you said, I think that if we take like Whitehead's view, uh, there is a processual perspective that we can take on the world and us, that we are a pattern and a process that is relatively stable for a period of time, masquerading as a closed system.
Mm. Yes.
So we are basically open systems individually, masquerading as closed systems.
Hmm.
And we are alienated from our true nature and alienated from the natural world around us. And and so I think that the survival of our species probably depends on us recognizing and taking a processual perspective and point of view. Um, it's that important to me.
Yeah. Yes. I agree. And I think what you're hitting on fundamentally is the perspective. Like, how powerful is the perspective that you take? And that's what has the ability to transform you personally, society at large. It's
Mhm.
about a perspective shift. And perspective can be analogized kind of to the system of self, like that you're a system and you have this conceptual self you've created over time to identify who you are. And that system of self that you're identified with right now is different than the one that was when you were 10 years old. Right? I mean, you have changed tremendously. Your belief systems, your intentions, your where your attention's focused, you conceptually understand the world completely differently than from age 10. But the key to realizing know yourself and all the Greek philosophy, what they talk about is what's the thing that hasn't changed? What is the same from age 10 to now? And that's consciousness. That's the observer of what's transpired. The same observer was there when you were 10, observing the processional changes that you're going through, the process that you are. And I think that realization that you talk about with perspective, shifting to a process focused realization, is that you are changing. You are part of this non-continuous aspect. I mean, you have this continuous consciousness in the background that is observing this process, and that's who you truly are. But in the midst of life, we identify with these different levels and different ideas, and that becomes who we think we are, and we operate from that level. The key is to peel back those layers like an onion and get back to that true self that's observing the process as it goes on. And from that vantage point, ethics is obvious. Like, you are part of a greater system. There's clearly the greater good is what you strive for, because it's best for you and best for those around you. And that's the kind of future, I think, that you and I are talking about when we're trying to say there's a more ideal future that awaits, but it's a choice, and we're going to have to choose wisely and not choose the same way we've chosen in the past. And that's true within our power. Like, and that's why I called it this era the Enlightenment, the Renaissance, because it's a transformational time period, and we have AI that is truly a change agent of unbelievable proportion that's going to alter society dramatically. So change is coming, whether we like it or not. So let's make it one that we do like. Let's make it to a change that we do like and head in that good direction, and that involves that perspective shift, like you've discussed, to realize, to, instead of ego faced inside Plato's cave, to this infinite game, this higher self that operates on the basis of the good, true, and beautiful, and really tries to manifest that in the world, and experiences on the inside, and then makes it real on the outside.
Yeah, there are several things that you mentioned that I want to touch on. I'm making a note of it here.
Yeah, I'd love to
Um,
hear your thoughts.
and so viewing ourselves as separate from the whole is a fixed mindset. Viewing ourselves in a processual way, in a relational way, as part of the whole, is a growth mindset.
Mm.
A fixed mindset is the finite game. The growth mindset, the open system, is a growth mindset, or a open system view is a growth mindset. It's a finite, infinite game.
Yes.
And so when you were talking, I saw all of these layerings of concepts that we normally don't make connections with. And so just to repeat it, to make sure I've got it straight, we've got separate versus what? What would be the opposite of
Unity, I mean,
okay?
wholeness or wholeness, um,
Unity, wholeness,
integration. um,
processual,
yeah,
relational.
yeah,
Okay. Um, and
integrated,
so, and so that's,
integrated.
yeah, integrated, interdependent. Okay. Integrated, interdependent. And so we've got separate and we've got interdependent. The separate can also be viewed as open system, interdependent, or as
Close.
closed system, interdependent as open system.
Yes.
Um, the so you've got a growth mindset with an open system, a fixed mindset with a closed system. You've got um, um, the infinite game with the open system, the finite game with the closed system. It just seems
Correct.
like all kind of how do you see that? I mean, for me,
Yeah, I
it's a
mean,
real insight.
yeah, it's amazing. And honestly, the way I see it, what kind of ties it all together historically is Plato's cave. Honestly, which blows my mind that this human being could come up with this allegory that's so powerful and so explanatory in so many different levels. But basically, what you're describing, these two kind of a switch going off, it's inside the cave versus outside the cave.
Absolutely.
And you
Open
can
system,
you
closed system.
finite game, infinite game.
Yeah.
They're it's all there. And in terms of, you can, if you read that allegory, if you truly put your mind in it, you can see what it's like to be chasing shadows in a cave. You can feel what that would be like to really think that's reality. And he's telling you that's what you're doing right now. That's what you're doing by focusing your ego on the external world and chasing these objects based on fear or desire or power or social acceptance. Like, you are living that life inside the cave, a finite game where resources are limited and you're competing against others. And once you see the sunlight, like, it's just like, once you are enlightened, then you head outside the cave to the infinite universe of which you are a part, and you see the integration of life. You see how water flows and the trees, the sunlight comes down, gives energy. Like, you see the whole thing, and you're like, oh, there's a larger system of which I'm a part, and I can align with that. And if I choose to align with that, that is aligning with the laws of nature, and nature has a moral fabric to it. The reality does. And Plato says the quickest way to get out of the cave is the virtues. It's moderation, justice, courage, and wisdom. That's what he said. Just do those four things. Just four things. You can fit them in your hand, and you get out of the cave. Like, I pay attention to that. If I were had any sense about me, I would listen to what he had to say. And the most remarkable thing to me is that those virtues have been captured in the modern day positive psychology with their character strengths research, which demonstrates that around the world, there's six character strengths, those four virtues I just mentioned, plus humanity and transcendence, that are present in all cultures in all times, and that people who follow these are the ones that live a good, happy, flourishing, joyous life, which is what every human being's wanted since the beginning of humanity, on this planet. It hasn't changed. So, just like, the answers are there. And in today's day and age, this dichotomy, we have the ability to have, a pocket Plato with our AI. We can converse with some intelligence that's far beyond our capabilities, and raise our awareness, raise our consciousness, and our ability, get us outside the cave. Like, we have that power in our hands now. Like, it's all here. It just takes the intention. You have to just want to do it, and then work at it, and maybe find someone who's done it before, and go along that path. But I think it's so powerful, the simple lower nature versus higher nature, lower self versus higher self. Like, that's the whole explanation that you need to understand for how to work on yourself and how to engage the world in a better way.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
um, and one of the things that I've thought about, I'd kind of like to do a complexity or systems workshop for ethics and compliance professionals.
Yeah.
And one of the components of that is somehow giving people a taste of interdependence and oneness. Um, and I can give you one example of something that I think that I could do. But the reason that I am interested in coming up with ways to give people a taste is because the illusion of separation is so great and so powerful that that people can't even envision and imagine another way of being with the world. and with others around them. And so one example, and I think we've talked about this before, I think that um, the source of this came from, I believe, this the Future Self book. I can't remember the author right now, but um, but what he suggested is like when you're interviewing someone or talking to someone about their accomplishments, to ask them first of all, what's the thing that they have achieved that they're proudest of? Okay, so that's one question, and to have people answer that. And then the follow-on question is what events and what people, what meetings, what occurrences, aside from your own action, were pivotal in this achievement, you know, and then have people give the same answer from that perspective.
Mm.
And the point being that we always tend, because of separation, of placing ourselves at the center of the narratives of our lives, you know. But if we shift the perspective and the point of view, then all of a sudden we realize that our achievements, our efforts are all dependent upon integrating as seamlessly as possible with the whole.
Yeah.
So that's one exercise that I've thought of that can give people a taste and take them from something that's just cerebral understanding and acceptance of the illusion of separation into more of a felt sense of it.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'd be interested in working together to figure out, well, what other ways, what other thought experiments, what other pointers, you know, could we come up with that would give people a taste of unity consciousness, basically.
Yes. And that's, what you're saying is brilliant in that the point of anything is to actually experience it. One of my favorite quotes by Yogi Berra that in theory, there's no difference between theory and practice, but in practice, there is.
Yeah.
Like that encapsulates so much to me. It's like, that's the key. You can conceptually think of anything you want, but until you do it, until you feel it, you actually put it in practice in your life, you're never going to reap the benefits and you're never going to understand what it's truly like. And it seems like to me, the key is kind of this concept of you don't know what you don't know. Someone has to be able to grasp that and realize, okay, this is how I function. This is my perspective. But there's things I don't even know that I don't know about because I've never experienced them. There's things that I know, whatever I'm good at, what I spend my time doing, I'm an expert in, whatever the case may be. And there's things that I know I don't know. Like I know I don't know high level math. I took calculus in college. I endured that. I know that I'm not an excellent mathlete. I'm not going to pursue that, but I understand that. But there's things that I have no clue exist, no clue what the experience is going to feel like, and that's the majority. That's infinite, actually. There's an infinite number of those things. So that should allow you to be humble and have some humility and be able to engage the world in it with an open mind and an open heart and realize there's so much I don't know. What can I learn? And this is why Plato says the meaning of life is education, to learn. And it's not just learning about random subjects, it's learning about yourself. It's like, who am I? What is this system of self that's operating out here in the world? And that type of education is what's going to allow you to change your perspective, to elevate it and see the greater good, see the larger system of which you're a part, the infinite game that lies outside the cave versus this finite, continuous, competitive, what you learn from your parents or from your friends or from the media or anyone else. Like those are just beliefs that have been placed in your head. They're not good or bad. They're simply what people thought, and you thought it was reasonable to accept them at the time. Well, guess what? Not me, not you, not anyone has a perfect perspective on the world. None of us do. We've been misinformed. We have beliefs that aren't accurate. And so that's why the best advice would be kind of hold on loosely to your beliefs, hold
Yes.
on to them, but
Yeah.
loosely. Be aware that at any point you're going to have to drop it if you want to grow, develop, and truly get toward what's true, and how things really operate. But it's a mindset, and the key word that I always come back to whenever I teach is choice, choice, choice,
Mhm.
choice, choice. I just hammer that in because you have to understand that everything in your life is a choice, and you can choose to head this way or that way. You can be a victim, you can be a powerhouse, you can be whatever you want, but it's up to you to make that choice in your mind and then act accordingly. And that,
Yeah.
gives a great deal of power.
I think that this author, Dr. Bolton, um, I think that I recall something that she said because I'm interested in developing this. Yeah, she's not interested in methods, but I am.
Hmm.
And what she says is, like you indicated, keep kind of a loose hold. Um, hold, you know, hold lightly the future, but make detailed plans in the present,
That's great.
which is kind of maps to what you're.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Now,
excellent.
the another thing that I've kind of switching gears a little bit. Um, One of the things that Ken Wilber, and you know who Ken Wilber is.
Uh-huh.
Um, a lot of his stuff is very dense for me, but
Yeah.
one of the things that he said in a recent book that he wrote um, is that this idea of the witnessing point, the witness, as we call it, I prefer to call it the witnessing,
Yeah.
which is not identifying with the content of consciousness. But he says that one indication that the witness consciousness is stable is is treating your thoughts like any external object that you might see,
Mm,
like a mountain or a lake or another person. Clearly, you're not me, at
yes.
least in this context. And then treating these emerging thoughts as though they're a passing cloud. But you have to have a reference point to be able to do that. And I have to say that when a thought comes up for me, it seems to come up from the center of me, and I immediately forget myself and become that thought. You know,
Uh-huh.
that's the easiest way I can describe it. And so, along the lines of having a stable witness or a stable point of witnessing and exploring that relationship, I had a feeling in my meditation this morning, um, and I kind of reduced it to a haiku, and I don't remember it because I put it in my phone. But um,
Love your haikus.
thank you. But instead of running out to greet a thought, to wait. Let me go and get it actually because
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
it's important. Okay, don't run out to greet a thought. Hang back instead and let it pass you by.
Yes.
Um, and in a way, that haiku kind of led me to the point of thinking, okay, as thoughts arise, is it possible to let them arise, but for me to maintain awareness? that they are arising and to watch them arise and to pass away. Um, because that seemed to be kind of a critical point. Um, it's just so easy to get swallowed up by thought.
Yeah,
Is there a
absolutely.
way to hang back when thoughts come up, either random thoughts or thoughts associated with emotions or traumatic events? Is it possible for the thought to come up and to still maintain a level of reflexive self-awareness without
Yeah.
falling into and allowing that thought to expand to be the sum total of your experience in any particular moment? Um, does any of that make sense to you, or do you have any thoughts about that um, as a reasonable approach? Or is it even important, do you think, to experiment?
Yeah, I think it's vital. I think you've hit kind of maybe the core issue that most people face, you know? Michael Singer talks about this. There's just like, who is that talking in my head? What is this stuff that I don't even control or come up with? Who's talking in there? Like that, most people identify themselves with their thoughts. And so they get wrapped up in them, they get pulled away, they get traced. And people who have worked on themselves, who have taken some steps, it doesn't come easy, but you have to work at it if you want to know yourself. You start to realize, oh, I'm not my thoughts, that's just something that comes into me for whatever reason. It's something biologically, neurologically, something maybe energetic that comes in, and it's not me. And I don't have to identify with that. I can, as you say, hold back. I see it from a distance and kind of like laugh at it if it's a stupid thought. I mean, if you think about like some of the thoughts you have, they're insane, they're crazy. And like, you wouldn't go if you went to a professional, stock a broker and wanted advice on investment and they talked to you the way your thoughts did, you'd think that person's insane and you'd never talk to them again. Well, guess what? That's what's happened in your head. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to identify with it. You can distance yourself from them, just as you said. And that's an incredibly powerful practice for elevating your consciousness because it allows you to get back to that witness, that deeper part of who you truly are. And therefore, you're not pulled and swayed by the emotion, by what comes up when these things happen. You're an
Uh-oh,
to
you
how you want to engage once that happens. And I believe if you continue to work on yourself to such an extent, there you reach a point where you attain peace of mind, right? The peace that surpasses is worth any amount of wealth in the world. To have peace of mind and to be able to look at the world clearly without being bombarded by different things coming out of there, and to just have a clear space, a silent space from which to engage the world. It changes everything. And that's something that all of us are capable of. Anything that any human being's done on this psychological development level, any of us can accomplish. Not physically. I'm never going to be as good a basketball player as Michael Jordan or LeBron James or Steph Curry. I never will. I can't do that. I accept that. But whatever, Plato did, whatever Buddha, whatever Christ, you know, it's not like I can just make it happen, but I can work toward those ideals and see and reap the benefits of what they did. And those are exemplars, and everyone should have exemplars they aim for, to try to emulate, because it's happened. There's proof that it's possible. Now you can do the same thing. You just have to align yourself and head in that direction.
yeah. Well, that's very helpful to get your perspective because it's it's one thing for me to have this cognitive understanding that I am not my thoughts.
Yes.
But where the rubber meets the road is it what happens when a thought arises?
Yep.
And is there a stable point of witnessing awareness that, as I said in the haiku, does not run out to greet a thought,
Yeah.
but
Doesn't automatically identify and
but,
mesh with it.
but hangs back and is arising simultaneously with the arising of a thought.
Yes.
Um, and so it's just something I wanted to reflect on
Oh
and
yeah,
your
but it's
input, and I
incredibly,
appreciate your
yeah,
thoughts on it.
I appreciate you bringing it up because it's such an important thing that the vast majority of humanity is kind of afflicted with, or whatever word you want to stick with. Like that's how the normal operation is. And, we don't, in schools, we teach math and science. Like we don't teach these things that could transform society and culture and humanity to no end. But if it's not taught in schools in our public education or private education, then you got to figure it out for yourself. You got to realize, oh, that's worth pursuing. That's worthwhile. And that's how you can, come to know this different way of going through the world. And another point you brought up that I think is so important is the experiential aspect. And I love that you're talking about how do you make this experiential? Because that Yogi Bear quote again, concepts, they're just theories. They're nothing until you put them into practice. So what you're working on is brilliant. It's helping people to experience what it's like. I try to, when I teach Plato's Cave to people, I try to get them to feel what it's like with the lights out and looking at shadows. Like if you can feel that difference and then imagine what it's like to leave a cave looking at shadows and to see the world in 3 dimensions with the universe and the sun and the stars. It's beyond comprehension, the difference in what Plato is saying. And that's not by accident that he made that so illustrative. Like he's telling you that's what truly awaits you if you can disidentify with thoughts, if you can untangle and stop operating from that lower self and start functioning from the higher. And as going back to, it's the experiential aspect. How do we get people to experience that so that they realize, oh, there's things greater than I've experienced in my life so far, and I want to strive toward that, because that's the key to getting people to transform themselves and work on elevating their consciousness and make the world a better place. But you have to have that intention, it has to be unlocked. And I think, the first is just to realize that you don't know what you don't know. And the second is to allow them to experience glimpses of that in like the exercise you're talking about with. I think that's great. And I think that type of education is so much more valuable, the experiential aspect, so that people know what it's like and then they can actually have a taste of what they can strive toward. I think that changes everything.
I think it changes everything potentially because you have to go to the root assumptions to
Yes.
see changes on the surface. And like Ian McGilchrist, I don't know if you're familiar with the
Uh-huh.
master and the emissary, but like he talks about, the master being the right brain, the holistic brain, the brain that embraces all, and the left brain, which has its purpose, okay, slicing and dicing and scheduling and you know and um, and making its way, making the organism's way through three-dimensional reality, basically. The problem is that the left brain forgets that it's the emissary. It assumes that it is the master, basically. And uh, and the problem there, from the standpoint of spiritual growth and progression, and from Plato's cave, is it's the prisoner in the cave who has convinced themselves that they are experiencing the world outside the cave, but they are still in the cave, basically.
Yes.
Um, that, and I think that's the thing that we have to kind of be aware of, um, as a real a danger in personal growth and transformation, is to think that we have arrived when we have not even left the station. And um, and so that's why the experiential aspect, and in non-duality, these are called pointers, to give people kind of a taste of non-dual awareness and understanding. And to me, when you have that one exercise, that I described, looking at an achievement, it's a very easy and innocuous way to kind of redirect people's attention to the fact that, gee, in my own experience, as I shift my perspective and my point of view, um, I'm nothing without other people. None of this would have happened without other people or chance occurrences that I don't really plan for and have no control over. And all of a sudden, there's a possibility of a shift. And if there are other kinds of things that kind of the Trojan horse, in a way, of slipping past the left brain,
Yeah.
um, and all of a sudden giving people a different perspective and a point of view that that makes it easier to engage organizations and the world in a way that's more effective, you know.
Yes.
Um, Another thing that I think is very powerful that I would integrate into this workshop as an important exercise is a systems um, flow kind of exercise, inflows and outflows, where we take something like a stock of integrity defined in this way, operationalized in this way. What does that actually look like? And what things can we do on the inflow side, okay, to maintain that stock of integrity? But also, what can we do on the outflow side that is a leakage, that is bringing down the levels of integrity in an organization? And I think we have a clear bias toward inflow things. What can we do? It's much more difficult to think about where is the leakage and to address the leakage. Because if you do that, then you can maintain a higher level of stock of integrity without a tremendous level of investment on the front end. An investment I'm seeing as training, communications, um, 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 kind of the things that you do to increase the levels of integrity, as opposed to thinking about, well, what's causing the leakage of integrity, like a senior leader's behavior.
Right.
That's not something that is directly, involved in policies and programming and everything. You can do all that stuff, but it doesn't have the maximum effect if you're not looking at the outflows.
Yes. And what comes to my mind when you're talking about this is kind of law of cause and effect, which is a little bit removed, but just the realization that every effect has a cause, right? And so in your example, like the manager that's, not in integrity and not in alignment and is causing employees to be hypocritical, see a hypocritical type of a stance and change the way they behave, those are effects from the cause. And the reason why it's harder to see what you're describing is because it's not as directly connected. It's like a couple of steps removed. That's why you have to have the bigger picture in mind. That's why you have to look at the whole system and not the component parts. And in fact, the relationship among the component parts is more important than the parts themselves. That's where meaning is derived. That's where you understand how things operate. And that's true. We've had this has been a thread throughout our discussion. The fact that if you want to understand and make changes and make things better, you have to go back to the source. You have to go, the closer you get to the source, the more effective
Mhm.
your change can be. And that's what systems thinking is all about, in my understanding of it, because you want to get to if you're a system and I'm a system on a personal level to step outside the organization, then getting to my mindset is much higher and more effective than altering the simple actions that I take on a regular basis. Because if I change my mindset, I'll change all my actions.
Yeah.
Versus if I change my actions toward a person, there'll be one interaction that's different. Well, there's a lot more interactions in my life than that. So you want to trace up to what's the true cause, which is not it's the action you're taking, but where does that action trace back to? And that's where you trace back to your mindset, and you realize my perspective, my system of systems, this is where I'm coming from. And the way I see the world is affecting how I interact with the world. And that's why when the Greeks say know yourself, they're talking about going beyond your mindset, even to a deeper level of consciousness of your awareness, that thing that hasn't changed since you were 10 years old. And that is from that place, you operate at a fundamentally different level. You're not identified with the thoughts. You're objective because you realize this is the source and everything else is an object, versus a subject. That's the only subject. And it changes everything. Just like you said, relate to your thoughts like you relate to a mountain because it's an object just like the mountain is. And so that's the power in working your way up through the levels to really know yourself and understand source, and then effectuate change from the top down. I think that's the key to all of systems thinking, as far as I can tell.
Well, we've really plowed a little bit of new ground today, I
I
think.
love it. We always have the best. I have the best time talking. I hope you feel the
Yeah.
same
Oh,
way.
I do enjoy it a lot
It's wonderful.
because it's just multiplying insights,
Yeah, yeah.
in different ways. And I found it very helpful. And if there are other exercises that you think may give people that taste of of oneness, let me know. Um,
Yes, I think that may be the most important thing you and I could kind of focus on truly to make the biggest change. And the last thing I'll say about our conversations is that there's synergy. The it's greater than the sum of its parts, what we create. And that's kind of magic if you think about it. Like, here's two parts, how does it create more? And it's like, is there another dimension where the energy comes from? I don't know,
mhm.
but it's a true thing, and it happens in all kinds of relationships. And if you realize that power of synergy, that's why you want to collaborate, that's why you want to work with others, because it magnifies it way beyond what you alone could do or they alone could do. It's a powerful way to go through life.
Totally agreed.